Welcome to the show where leadership is no longer built on adrenaline, overfunctioning, and pretending you're fine. I'm Janessa Finley Ford, and I help emerging leaders regulate their nervous system, sharpen their decision making, and lead with the kind of grounded presence where their calm can be felt when they enter the room. Through neuroscience, soul work, and deeply practical structure, I teach ambitious women how to create calm without losing their momentum. Because truthfully, the most powerful leader in the room is rarely the loudest. She's the safest, clearest, and most connected. And speaking of powerful women, let me introduce you to my incredible co-host.
Hi, everybody. I'm SJ. I am a results-driven leader who leads with conviction and strength, setting an unapologetic standard of excellence. I build high-trust communities where candor and accountability forge dependable leaders. And as a certified crystal healer and shamanic earth and energy medicine practitioner, I blend science, spirit, and strategy together to rewire energetic patterns for peace, potency, and purpose.
Great work. Because, you were introducing yourself, me not introducing you. But, some days go like that. Today is one of them. So today, you may have crossed everything off your to-do list. You may have answered the emails, handled the fires, because there's usually always a few of those, moved a project forward, kept your team moving. So many things to do, but why does your body still feel like it's being chased? And that's the question we're opening with today. A lot of high achieving women think they have a time management problem or discipline problem or a motivational problem. I know I felt like I've had all of those problems throughout the years. And the truth is, you don't. And I had to do a lot of work to discover I didn't either. And really, the relationship with masculine energy becomes distorted by pressure, fear, and especially survival. That was my trap. And that's the trap we're going to expose today because the dangerous part of that is from the outside, it looks like success and it gets rewarded so often. It's the woman that's pushing harder than everyone else. You're the person holding everything together. You are the one staying productive, but you're quietly disconnecting from yourself in order to get everything else where it needs to be. But you know what? You could also be the opposite. And I've lived in this space also because that pendulum never fails to swing from one end to the other. You could be the woman waiting for clarity. You could be waiting for certainty, not just clarity, but guaranteed knowing. Or you might be waiting for that right feeling. I'm just going to know it. And once I know it, once I feel it, then I can move. So on one side of this pattern, there's overforce, and on the other side, there's overprocess. And both of them sabotage the law of inspired action. And that's what we're going to be talking about here today. Inspiration, it was never meant to be passive, and leadership was never meant to feel like punishment. And this is the unseen layer underneath all of your movement. It's not your schedule and it's not your strategy. Your energetic relationship with movement yourself is where it all begins. So the part of you using this distorted masculine energy to create safety through pressure or avoiding healthy masculine structure because action feels vulnerable. That's the unseen dynamic that creates a very visible effect. We talk about burnout a lot in this space because it so frequently gets masked as ambition, one of those visible effects. Or maybe you're the overthinker and you call it alignment. Or exhaustion, that we just say, oh, it comes with leadership and we normalize it when it doesn't actually have to be that way. Or we never move out of pause and we're actually in a space of stagnation, but we tell ourselves we're seeking discernment. And this is why some women are constantly moving, but they're never truly advancing. That's also why others stay spiritually intelligent, but physically stuck and also not reaching where they want to be. Inspired leadership does not happen when feminine vision and masculine action are fighting each other. It happens when they partner together. So intuition informs the movement, structure supports your vision, and peace and power, they stop competing with one another. Today, we're talking about the law of inspired action and helping women leaders reclaim the balanced masculine energy before distorted masculine energy burns you out, shuts you down, or disconnects you from yourself entirely. So let's open our eyes. Ashley, what else do you want to introduce about the law of inspired action? I feel like you always have such an eloquent way of bringing these laws into such a grounded, tangible explanation.
Well, I mean, the universal law of inspired action is not just sitting on your couch and wait for the universe to deliver your destiny through angel numbers, right? Like, that's not actually
Can
inspired.
it?
Right? Like, that's not inspired action. Like, that's not what it's actually talking about. Now, I love me some angel numbers, and definitely that is a component. And it's something that you spoke about very eloquently within the Stronger Together call last week, where you said, yes, we're going to talk about the universal law of inspired action through the divine masculine lens, but you can't actually have it without the divine feminine being a portion of this inspired action lens as well. So we could argue the angel numbers might be a component to that feminine energetic, but through the lens of the masculine, that's not really what we're talking about, right? Like, we're not trying to talk about avoidance through a spiritual filter. Inspired action also is not hustling harder or pushing more or controlling the outcomes or micromanaging your life and everybody else's life around you or forcing timelines. And it certainly is not adrenaline-based execution either. Inspired action means aligned movement, grounded movement, so that it has staying power. It's movement where your nervous system, your intuition, your discernment, your emotions, and your actions are no longer fighting with each other, but they're actually working within the same lens for the same mission. Because often the trauma action, that adrenaline response, feels completely different in the body than inspired action, but we're so used to that rush that is when we take the action, is when we feel the adrenaline fueling our body and driving us rather than us just being the amazing driven women that we all are. And I think it's so important as we go into this today to really be able to discern the difference of, is this an adrenaline fuel, or am I really lit up about this because it's for me? And those are two very, very different things that come into play with this universal law.
Yeah, we are such adrenaline junkie type of creatures. So I love how you come at it from this angle because we can really confuse and distort the the adrenaline rush, the coffee, right? Makes your brain kind of tingly or your body kind of tingly, makes you kind of happy in the morning. That feels good. So if we have that adrenaline, it doesn't matter what we have to handle. We just feel good. We've got power. And so we end up actually distorting the power and we'll either over masculize and burn out and emotionally disconnect, or perhaps over spiritualize and land in passivity and avoidance. Excuse me. And it often looks like more action and always moving, always handling, always carrying, always fixing. It's probably not doing a great job of creating space. That was another reminded lesson for me this past week, where it can be so easy to jump into urgency, and urgency we often equate to importance when it actually doesn't make us or a situation important. It's just a lot of masculine energy. Also, we can confuse pressure with productivity. So when the pressure heightens, you force more production, just get the things done to alleviate the pressure. And we've talked about pressure within the Stronger Together community quite a bit in learning how to work with that pressure. Pressure creates beautiful things like pearls and diamonds, And so it's not something that we want to avoid, but it's not something that we want to distort or channel into the wrong avenue either. This like adrenaline rushing, forced action form of masculine energy will also lead us into the exhaustion with leadership. In my first role in management, um, over a decade ago, I hate to age myself, but that's the reality of it. I was exhausted all the time, and I really just thought it was part of the gig. It was high stress, and it just came with the territory. And I really had to learn how to realign myself and stay grounded instead of allowing that masculine energy to really like whip me in many different directions that was not always focused or beneficial. And when I got really, really honest with myself, I realized that underneath it all was a really huge fear of failure, also a huge fear of being seen as lazy, because that for sure was not something that was accepted growing up on a farm. There were always so many things to do on the farm. Lazy was never an option. Really hate disappointing people. I don't want to be a disappointment. And of course, losing control in my very poised Enneagram 1 persona, losing control would be a shit show. So let's not do that. So I see underneath all of that, there were a whole lot of things driving just being in action and constantly living from stress, cortisol, and it certainly wasn't inspired action. And sometimes it was just really being frantic, just trying to move the needle forward, however, in whatever way. It just kills it, it squashes it, it like suffocates all of the space, and it really dulls the outcome. That's my experience living the adrenaline junkie leadership life. I didn't really plan on, I just started kind of going down the rabbit hole, and it all unwound because there's so much there. Have you had different experience, or have you been able to avoid the adrenaline side of the masculine energy?
Of course not, right? Like I too am an adrenaline junkie, just it presents differently. Um, I want the opposite of control. I want to be able to do what I want to do when I want to do it, which meant when I lean into the distorted masculine of the adrenaline junkie portion, I found myself certainly overworking and doing all of those things, but ostracizing myself from team and group activities and just doing it on my own because I can get it done quicker by myself. And I trust my information because I put the time in to make sure that, I researched it and it's like correct and stuff. So I often found the adrenaline aspect being ostracizing myself from doing it as a team, but also really not wanting to have to fool around with other people that were in my sphere. So even though leadership positions is something where I was sitting, I was kind of a one-man show, like out here trying to do it by myself, which was probably terrible for the teams that I was leading, because if you weren't doing it quick enough or on my timeline or to the level that I thought it should be, then I'm just going to do it myself and completely undermine everything that they had already done and throw it in the trash and start over. And I also, unlike some members probably of my team, I want to be on to the next thing. I want to do something different. I don't want to have to do the same thing every single day. So when a new shiny object comes along, I would like to run along and go do the new shiny object and, forge that road ahead. And sometimes that was before the other project had come to completion energy. So while I had trailblazed it, started it, got it moving, and have it almost packaged, then I would drop the package in the team's lap and say, now finish it, with very little like background information or groundwork or what even the goal of that outcome was before I had moved on to the next thing. And also, of course, as an adrenaline junkie, like when I hit my distorted or unbalanced masculine, that's going to look more like dominance, aggression, no emotions, and kind of leading with an iron fist. So, yeah, mine looked different, but it still created the same type of chaos, right? Like it still was not going to be a true balanced leadership role that forms trust in the people that I was leading in those times too. And certainly, like you would have in those days often heard me say things like, why are feelings even being brought up here? Like how you feel about this doesn't matter. So it was definitely very much leaning into my personality type for sure, but very unbalanced and still seeking that next high, that next adrenaline high. What's the next problem to solve? What is the next item that we can move on to? And preferably, please give me the tasks that nobody wants to buy into so that I can, you know, fight with some people too, because that seems like a fun adrenaline high, because then I don't have to focus on the areas that I should be focusing on, which is learning how to collaborate, learning how to actually work as a team. Like if you're fighting the thing that we have to do, then of course I have to fight you. So there was a lot of justification within my toxicity as well. So yeah, that's how mine looks. Super awesome, by the way. Everybody wants to work for me, clearly. If this is my natural predisposition.
I found it so funny and counterintuitive when you started talking and you're like, well, I like want no control, right, over yourself isn't what you're saying. And then as you're explaining, I'm like, but it kind of sounds like you want all the control, like to call the control that way. Like it's just
Mhm.
disguised.
Yep.
Yeah. And it also made me reflect on that first experience I had in management and leadership, where there was no shortage of conflict. Like you would have loved it. You would have had a
Awesome.
fight to fight all the time. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm over there dying. I'm like, can we please all just play nice and get along and like focus on the shared goal? Like there are different ways to do it. We'll figure it out and agree, but can we quit? Like the passive refusal of even having a conversation to the outright in your face. I completely like it was every flavor of conflict that you can possibly imagine. Not built for my personality type per se, but you would have thrived in that arena. Although we know we always are placed in the areas where we're being called to grow for
Mhm.
sure. So, in bringing this topic up, I also wanted to bring in a couple ways or a few ways for people to bring it back into alignment when they are in force or in that adrenaline space. And the one I alluded to earlier that I was reminded of again this week, because whew, when that adrenaline drops, everything speeds up. And so being able to pause long enough to hear yourself again, being able to slow things down to create some pace and some space. And a couple great ways of doing that are just real quick check-ins with yourself. Is this actually urgent? Or am I just uncomfortable? So in my discomfort, right? This certainly speaks for my lens. If I'm uncomfortable, we naturally want to speak first, interrupt the long silence. We want to take action and move if we're feeling some sort of discomfort. And so checking in, is it urgent even? Truly? Also, is it aligned? Or am I just afraid to stop moving or taking action? As I mentioned, for me, the underlying fears would just rule me. So I was afraid of stopping any action. I was afraid of losing momentum. I was afraid of the guilt and the shame and the other self-judgments that would come in if I just took a rest for a minute for some discernment or even to just rejuvenate. And the thing about inspired action, when we're in alignment with it, in order to become aligned with it, the inspired action so often comes after creating that space for regulation, not before and not during. So that is one of the ways that you can bring yourself back into a regulated state and aligned state so that you know the action that you're taking is truly guided and it's going to be on point for the situation that you're in.
Yeah, and definitely looking at too, like as you're listening to Janessa's story and my story, really discerning too, like which one of that coin do you fall on so that you can kind of take a look at some of our examples as well. I can tell you that anybody who is falling on my side of this misalignment coin of toxic masculinity in the workplace for sure, really take some time to pause and ponder or feel into what are you avoiding by needing the adrenaline rush? Like, what is the thing that you're trying to mask or avoid having to deal with? For me, it was entirely avoidance of emotions and having to process all of those pesky little feelings that I had been hiding for a few decades at that point. Is it grief? Is it anger? Is it emptiness? Is it exhaustion, loneliness, disappointment? Like, what is the thing that you are avoiding? So then you continually seek out that adrenaline rush, that continuation of as soon as something feels stable, you want to move to the next high. You want to move to the next problem to solve, the next chaotic situation to fight with. Looking at that. And then the other side of that pendulum, too, is sometimes we can find ourselves in that freeze response and we pretend like it's alignment. Like I'm just pausing to wait for clarity or to wait until I have the precise, most perfect thing aligned and I don't have any more fear about what could happen. So, really discerning, of course, if you muscle test or pendulum, do that. Like, is my pause aligned or is my pause avoidance or something out of balance too? Because oftentimes we can find that we're really just not doing or moving forward out of fear or trauma conditioning or the nervous system is just so overwhelmed that the body literally freezes. And instead of recognizing it or seeing it for what it is, the fear, the overwhelm, perfectionism, emotional avoidance, nervous system shutdown, whatever the thing is that is misaligned, creating the pause, we'll call it things like, oh, I'm just waiting for divine inspiration or intuition to drop in or discernment or I just think it's not aligned. Like, if it's not a hell yes for me, then it must not be for me. Sometimes that's true, sometimes that's not true. And certainly, intuition is real. If you guys have been following us, we absolutely believe in intuition and discernment as well. But in that, and we'll get to the universal law of polarity here soon, I think possibly even next month. But in all of that, avoidance is also real. That is also something that we experience. And a lot of people are spiritually bypassing their fear of movement because movement creates vulnerability. And once you send that email, you can't recall it if they've read it and kind of like plucked that band-aid off. Or once you launch that business, you can fail publicly. And that could be something that we are scared of doing, and that fear can cripple us. Whereas, like, we're so focused on that fear that we lose out or miss out on the success that could come. Or even, once you set that boundary with that really shitty employee who's horrible, somebody could be upset. Somebody else could view you as like, oh, she must be a terrible leader because she can't work it out with this horrible human. So it's that fear of judgment of what will this impact be on maybe even the terrible person, because some of us are better people than others, and some leaders are so freaking amazing, and all of you who have them, like Janessa, should appreciate them. Because some people actually care about that other terrible person and really want them to have the best experience as well. I don't spend a lot of time on that. Like, I feel like you'll figure it out or you won't, and none of that seems like my problem. So I'm the opposite side of this pendulum often. But instead of really like being okay and looking at, is this aligned for me? And I'm going to move forward and do it because this is for me. Sometimes we'll just get stuck in, I need to research. I have to know more, right? If you're an awesome head point, like that's one of my favorite paralysis tricks of, oh, I just don't know enough to make the decision, or I haven't prepared enough for this, or I'm over analyzing, or maybe I just need to journal some more, or if I wait long enough, I'll figure it out, or it'll feel right, or we just get stuck forever in that processing loop of I'm just processing through the information or the feelings. until forever time. And then the nervous system mistakes or tries to pretend like that preparation is actually creating safety when it really isn't. So looking at what is your default setting? Which side of that pendulum swing do you normally default to? Because the opposite side of that is probably where your growth edge is learning how to do the opposite. Like if you run into the fire head first immediately without having any of that discernment and that pause, that's where your growth edge is learning how to pause. Whereas if you get stuck in the pause of indecision, then your growth edge is probably just, sometimes shit, flipping a coin and saying, well, A it is. Like we drew heads today, let's just make a decision and move forward so that we're not stuck in that decision paralysis, but really being honest with who you are and what those default settings are is going to give you like a really easy fast track to the opposite of your default settings is probably where the growth is going to happen.
I really love how we bring the contrasting characteristics to the table always in everything that we do. And I have a really brief story. I'll actually segue it into my next point, so bear with me, but it doesn't have anything to do necessarily with leadership in a workspace. But over the weekend, sometimes, let me say first, before I get into the story, sometimes being too is a very real thing. Sometimes being too committed to not wanting to reflect people's own stuff, patterns, messiness back to them enables them. And it doesn't necessarily have the effect of not wanting to complicate or multiply the situation. And it will do exactly that. It will exasperate it. So, over the weekend, my non-work related story, I had been not able to do hardly anything productive around my property the last couple weekends. And it's that time of year. Like the grass is growing, the trees, things are blooming, there's landscaping, there's lots of things to be done. So I was getting some of that stuff off of my to-do list, which I absolutely love being in nature. So it makes me so happy to be out getting the sprinklers going and getting my hands in the dirt. And I was trimming the tree. And I think I've shared in the past, but if you're new here, I'll just refresh your memory. Typically, there's a birdie family that lays eggs and grows their little babies in my backyard every year. And as I was trimming the tree, I saw this nest and I thought it was an old nest from a previous year that had never been removed from the tree. And so I jam my hatchet in there to pull the nest out of the tree, and I discover that I just cracked open an egg wide, like completely destroyed it. And there were two other eggs in the nest. And then I'm like, oh my gosh. And I disturbed it from it was all mudded into the tree. And then I was having a moment about, well, if it's a windy day, is this nest even safe? Will the birds come back and hatch out the eggs that are viable? Like, what is going to happen? And I had so much guilt and remorse. I was so remorseful for that one little hatchet swing, which brings me to my next point about balancing and aligning with inspired action when you get caught up in this over masculized, if that's a word, masculine energy, is stopping to ask what needs done, like what needs done, and what actually matters. Because that damn nest being in that tree, it didn't matter. Like it didn't need done and it didn't matter. It could just stay there. But I didn't even take a moment. Like I'm just all in motion and getting rid of things and going to town. And I took out the nest. But more importantly, within leadership, for those of you who are such high achieving women, you can get caught in the trap of wasting massive, massive energy reacting instead of actually directing. And this is even with setting boundaries around behaviors, what is, what isn't tolerated. And sometimes addressing a situation isn't actually what matters. It can just feel like it's something that needs to be done for the sake of relationships or the sake of the greater good, whatever your underlying motivation is, but it can stay focused on what actually matters. That's when you're really going to be taking action from a place of inspired action that is divinely guided versus having this long list of things that just they need to be done, and so you're doing the things for the busy work and perhaps you're just spinning your wheels while you're doing it. um, we can just drink the cold coffee and pretend we're fine while we're doing all those things that need to be done, but if they don't actually matter, they're not going to get us anywhere anyway. So that is one of the things that always brings me back to a grounded place to take action that is truly aligned for me.
Yeah, and I mean, looking too at, does this do certain things even deserve an energetic response or a physical response at all? Right? Because the universe is always going to provide us with, have you learned the lessons options, right? Like, did you learn the boundary? Did you learn the thing? And sometimes, like, the strongest power move is no response is actually a response. And a lot of us, I know in my space, and you're supposed to respond to emails within 2 hours of receipt, right? I like to model for my team the same thing. So things that I discern are not actually worthy of a response get an email response of acknowledged, period. That's it. I saw it. And it's not for me. Sounds like you were venting. Sounds like you had a bad day. And none of it is for me to resolve. Good luck to you, though. I'm sure the universe will give you more opportunity to feel into what this actual thing is because it doesn't have shit to do with me. So cool. And then there's the opposite of my natural disposition is to do things like that versus this triggered a feeling and a chord within me. It's my responsibility as a leader to sit with that trigger and that chord before I respond, to discern, like, what is this within me that's for me to learn the lesson in before I respond to this, which goes back to what Janessa was talking about of we react to so much. Whereas if we just take the time to discern what is in this for me, like what is my thing to learn within this pattern, and maybe there's nothing. And if there's nothing, then that acknowledged period is great. But if it's more of a let me feel into like what is this activating within me that is for me to learn something new about myself, pausing and spending the time with what that is, maybe even giving a good night's sleep, and then deciding what the response looks like if a response even comes to fruition the next day. And there's, no rule that says I have to respond within 2 hours to people that are not in my direct chain of command. So those often receive no response. And I feel completely aligned with that the vast majority of the time. And sometimes there are days, I'll go back a week later and the energy is different. And now I will respond to those items, but really choosing and being selective with where you're going to devote your energy is one of the easiest ways that we can figure out how not to be overburdened and hit that burnout. Because if you decide that everything deserves your attention or your energy expense, you're going to hit burnout for sure. And certainly that was my jam of us respond to everything. Well, then you're getting short responses, snippy responses, and responses that aren't really helping anybody. And they're certainly not fostering relationships. So figuring out what our individual coping strategies are also is pretty important, right? Like if your calendar is packed every second of the day, probably telling yourself you're being productive, but what are you avoiding or what are you not creating space for you to actually be able to focus on that would be a priority rather than just having this full calendar and having your life, planned out for every 15 minutes of your entire duration. Now, for some people, maybe that's aligned. That shit would never, like, I would die. I would rather die than have that be my life, right? It's like that could be one pattern, or it could be another pattern of your coping strategy of I'll just handle it myself, right? This is definitely my coping strategy. And I would say, well, I'm just independent. I'm just more capable. Nope. Pretty sure what I'm actually doing is struggling with trust and struggling with the fact that I can trust people to support and help me. and to trust that they're as invested and as smart as I am, right? So it's really trust that I was struggling with and hiding it under, I'm sure I'm just independent. Or if you keep waiting for certainty to move forward, you're probably not waiting to be deeply aligned, but you might just be terrified of vulnerability. Like you could just be absolutely terrified of being that visible and vulnerable, and it doesn't have anything to do with moving once you're aligned. Or if you need constant urgency to function, like there has to be a fire, might not actually be ambitious, even though that's what you tell yourself. Your nervous system may simply only know how to move under pressure. It doesn't know what calm and peace feels like. So when you actually get to feel calm and peace, it freaks out because it's like, what is this? Like, it actually codes calm and peace as the lion trying to eat you in the jungle because you're just not used to that. You didn't grow up probably in a household where calm and peace was normal. And likely you were also, afforded accolades for reacting under pressure and being able to do the thing, even though it was hard and terrible and scary. So, like, you're actually rewarded for learning how to just react under pressure and move forward regardless of what's happening. And that's where also resting can make you feel completely guilty, or your identity may be entirely attached to what you achieve or the performance of what it looks like as well. That's not just personality traits though, right? Like if you listen to us, you're probably like, oh, this is Enneagram, whatever. It is, but it's also more than that. It's survival instincts and strategies that we had to build in order to survive certain genres and time periods and areas of our life that's just not real anymore. Like we have all built capacity to handle more and to handle things differently to where those old survival strategies, they're kind of outdated, and it's probably time to just go ahead and let them become completely non-existent.
There's so much there, so much good stuff. Um, as you were talking about, like for you, underlying trust with really being in paralysis rather than alignment and really, really waiting, waiting for a divine blueprint from God delivered in some gold envelope, and then I'll open it up and know exactly where to go. Go back to fear. There's fear of the wrong move. And one of the things that has been so beneficial for me and watching you in the way that you choose to move is how well you pivot, and that you are like friends with the pivot, where I am like an eye roll and annoyance with, wait a minute, why didn't my plan A take me on this really linear line from where I am to where I saw myself going? What do you mean I have to pivot? And so I tend to attract and work with other people, who have more of that fear of making the wrong move, doing the wrong thing, having to get comfortable with the process. That is one of the really big things with the Enneagram that I've been able to support people with, is embracing process in all of the things that we do. And oftentimes, if we look at the process of whatever project we're working, then that can help us get out of that state of paralysis as well, and out of that stagnancy or waiting, however that's showing up as we, are assessing the wisdom that we have to bring to the situation, or awaiting the intuition to drop in, or avoiding the situation because we're just going to discern what we should be doing or could be doing, or the next best step to take. And so what SJ has really modeled so well is, normalizing the movement before clarity. And her little mantra of doing something is nothing has been something she's shared also that really will help you get back into alignment when you're in that space of being too far in the pause. Because really, like, the energy of your ideas are going to decay when you're just endlessly analyzing, but not actually embodying and not actually moving. And a parked car, like, you can't steer it, you can't turn it, you can't pivot it, you can't do anything with it. So you only need just a little bit of movement or motion once you're in motion, then more clarity is going to be really revealed to you, more discernment. And so our action actually creates the evidence of what we're wanting to create, and our evidence creates confidence for us, and the confidence builds the momentum. And it simply isn't the other way around. You can't go from sitting back with your feet up, waiting for discernment to my next step is I'm just at momentum with confidence. And I have the knowingness that I'm on my way. Um, Very rarely, I shouldn't say never, 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 but very rarely is it going to work that way for you. So action and then allowing the clarity to come from there and being really comfortable with a pivot. Sometimes you have to change directions. If you're okay with it, the people you're leading are more likely to be okay with it as well. But, when I am annoyed about a pivot, typically the tone of the team follows suit. And so how we show up is really influential and instrumental in this as well, especially when we're responsible to some degree of having some productivity, some movement, momentum for a team of people, not just ourselves. And when you're working with a team, everyone's built differently as far as how they move in the workplace. And so the clearest individual in the room will have the most well-received, um, I don't know, what is the word, from the team. Like you'll be best received from your team, even when we have to pivot along the way. And the other one that I find is just so profound for people who get caught in the feminine trap of waiting for alignment, as because usually you're waiting to feel like it. And me being a feeler, I'm a big fan of this one. Because of course I want to do things when I feel like it, and overcoming the I don't feel like it trap. Like, man, I could stand and preach for a while, but inspired action is just not this emotional perfection. It's not going to land that way. And sometimes your inspiration is actually going to arrive after you take those first few brave steps. And so, yes, I'm all about emotional intelligence. And yes, I'm all about please don't gaslight yourself. Don't tell yourself you feel like it when you don't feel like it. That's not what I'm preaching here. But you have to have some loving middle ground of, I don't feel like it and fuck my feelings for right now. Pardon my language. But there is some reality that your feels can only take you so far, especially when they're not supportive of what you've worked so hard to build or what you are working so hard to build. And then getting caught in the trap of the feelings is just like, for me, it's a heartbreaking way of seeing people self-sabotage and get in their own way. So, yes, don't feel like it and then acknowledge it and take a few steps. It'll come. The inspiration will come, the momentum will come. Just move. As that song from my old crunk days, move. While I'm dropping all the expletives in this show, there's the B word. Anyway, that song always plays in my head when I feel myself stymieing in this, like, I don't feel like it. I'm like, just move. If I play that song, I tend to get into motion a little bit quicker.
You probably hear us talk a lot about leadership and leading our teams, but I want one thing to not be lost on us, that the reality of leading up is also real. If you can learn how to regulate your own nervous system, your own alignment, then it doesn't matter whether you're reporting to the other people or they're reporting to you. All of this still applies. Leadership actually is not title based, contrary to what lots of people probably would like to believe. Again, Janessa touched on this in the beginning when she said the strongest leader in the room is typically the calmest one, the one who can hold the capacity and the space for whatever the thing is that's coming down the pike. And that doesn't matter if you are at the top of the food chain or the bottom of the food chain. So when you're listening to this, I don't want you to think, oh, I'm only looking at this from me down and the people I'm leading, because that's not true, right? It's actually begins, of course, what we always say with self leadership, like how are you leading you? But then looking at it too, like if you are the calmest energy in the room, you're going to be leading with that energetic, no matter whether you're in a room of executives that are above you or your team that follows you, right? Like that doesn't actually have anything to do with titles or the way the hierarchy of the system is. That calm leadership is true no matter where, and that inspired action is going to apply no matter what situation or what hierarchy you're living in. So I hope throughout all of this, you're not hearing things like, oh, I should just stop moving, or does this mean I can't achieve the thing I want, or I have to stop leading because I don't have a team yet, or stop building. Not at all. We're just trying to teach you to stop abandoning yourself while you're moving through life. And that means at work, that means at play, that means at home. All of those things come into play with leadership. The goal is just not to be passively waiting for things to happen to you, right? Like you want to be the driver of your life. You want to be the one in charge of deciding and discerning, is this for me, or is this specific item not for me, and being okay with what that change of direction or that movement looks like, so that you can stop self-destructing by just trying to force everything to work, trying to force yourself into the corporate ladder or the corporate culture. I mean, I think if you look at Janessa and I and then try to, if you knew where we worked, and then discern, like, do they fit in with the culture? Absolutely not. We create our own culture, right? Like, she has her own culture within the sphere of influence that she has. I certainly have my own culture within my sphere of influence, because we have both made the decision to move through life aligned to us, right? The world aligns to me because I create the world around me. And that's really what we're looking at, is to have this goal of really having integrated leadership where you are the driver no matter what room you're in. You get to decide what is actually in alignment for you, and what world are you creating around you for those that work with you, for your family, for your friends, all of that. This is really where feminine vision and masculine execution all come together, where the nervous system is regulated, you're tapped into your intuition, discernment is fluid and easy for you. You have really beautiful, firm boundaries where needed, and movement and rest live in the same space because you discern which is right for you in the moment. And that moment can change at the drop of a hat as well. And you get to decide which one of those should be the driver today, so that all of you starts working together instead of against each other or just doing what you're told, right? One of the deepest forms of leadership is available when you just say, like, hey, is this for me? Is this right for me? And sometimes it comes in very clearly yes, sometimes it comes in very clearly no, and sometimes you have to have the pause to decide what is actually going to be worth my time for me, so that I'm not overexhausted, which will create the ability for you to lead powerfully, move intentionally, regulate emotionally, so that you're not disassociating from those emotions of yourself or others around you, so that you can trust not only yourself, but the people around you. And then you can truly build extraordinary lives without losing yourself in the process, because you don't have to disassociate from pieces of you in order to be successful in a corporate environment. You get to be woo and weird as shit if you want to. And it's amazing what corporate will actually accept and lean into when it's aligned and authentic to you and not something that's being forced.
Yeah, it's just so important, the part of it being aligned. I mean, we're talking about inspired action here, and we always come back to the topic of alignment. But what really resonates for you and what resonates are very different frequencies, vibrations, core values to an extent as well. And that is the really sacred thing about Stronger Together, is we're not here to offer a cookie cutter approach for anyone. We're really here to get to the core and heart of who you are as a being, so that you are able to be supported and being aligned as much as possible, and for that to be filled with ease as much as possible as well. So we're all about really individualizing the work with each person within that container. And there is so much value, like I talked about earlier in the show, watching SJ move through the world like she does, and even as being opposites, what she models, some of the things with boundaries and weaknesses that I have, that I can build strength from these weaknesses from having that modeled for me. And of course, having her support, and of course, having the interruptions to my patterns because she sees them so clearly. And that's the really beautiful thing about being within a community and group of other women who are there building. They're just building, they're building each other, they're building themselves, they're building collectively. So we're getting to the top of the hour, and unfortunately, that means it's time to wrap up. So, just a quick summary of today's show. This episode exposed you to two different women, not just SJ and I, but to two different types of women. And honestly, as I shared vulnerably, of being both before noon on some days, you probably have had that experience too. There's the woman, sprinting through her adrenaline life, fueled by cortisol and cold brew, and the belief that if she just handles one more thing, she'll finally feel safe enough to rest. And then there's also the woman who is leaned back, leaned out of the picture, waiting for the perfect clarity download from God before she makes any moves at all, as if the divine purpose is going to arrive via certified mail in a gold envelope. And it's going to contain those step-by-step instructions that every anyone loves. But while both patterns feel intelligent, neither one of them are actually the inspired leadership that's going to build the success you desire. Today, we also unpack the law of inspired action and that difference between the balanced masculine energy and the distorted masculine energy, and where feminine energy comes to play in all of this as well. Because our masculine energy is actually being leveraged to its maximum benefit when we're utilizing it through pressure, the panic, the overworking, overfitting, or force. And feminine energy also wasn't meant to be in these endless loops of constantly processing or emotional baggage or healing or hiding behind the word alignment, because that's what you're striving for, while your dreams are sitting over in the corner just collecting dust bunnies. The inspired leadership, it lives in the middle. It's in that balance. It's in the alignment that we're always talking about. And intuition leads the vision, while our grounded masculine energy gives that vision the structure, the movement, and also the follow through. So women are really going to stop worshiping exhaustion as proof that they matter or are valid or credible. Women are going to stop confusing movement with momentum. They're not the same thing. And movement doesn't automatically mean that you're building momentum. Women stop calling avoidance discernment, because they can tell the difference when they're actually not leaning in during the moment or when they truly are taking a pause to discern. And it's also where women stop pretending that they're just waiting for clarity when they're secretly terrified underneath, because they'll be able to not only become aware of their fear, but also have the tools to process through it. So sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is submit that proposal or send the email that you can't recall when someone reads it. Set a deadline, maybe even eat lunch like you are having the hottest date with yourself because you actually are a regulated adult, and stop turning your nervous system into a full contact sport. I do love me some full contact sports, but I definitely don't want to live there, and I don't want you to live there either. So let's get on to the part that today I'm not even going to pretend to be subtle about. If you are tired of swinging between the burnout and paralysis, Stronger Together was absolutely built for you. It's where women actually, they're not just sitting around discussing empowerment while staying trapped in the same patterns. They are learning how to embody the inspired leadership, how to interrupt their own patterns, how to regulate their nervous system without losing their ambition, how to move without forcing it, how to trust themselves. SJ talks so extensively about trust. You have to have that trust without waiting forever. And it's also where women learn how to create structure that supports their vision instead of suffocating it. Inside Stronger Together, women stop living reactive, overextended, spiritually exhausted lives, and they start being really truly their authentic, grounded, powerful, embodied selves. And through that mastery of self leadership, they begin to lead others, their family, place in all areas of their life with a success that actually feels good to live in. It doesn't feel like pressure and a burden to carry. And it's not because they lost their ambition, it's because they finally stopped building their lives from that old, outdated programming of survival. So I'm hoping today's episode hit a nerve with you. And if it did, it's just telling you that there's a doorway and come join us inside Stronger Together. Your next level, it's not waiting on more pressure, it's waiting on your partnership with us. And you can grab your seat and join us by visiting www.strongertogetherinstitute.com. And we'll be back here in 2 weeks. And until then, keep your eyes wide open.